On the PC, things are kind of a little bit less consistent. We did a survey of these 700 people, and we asked them what hardware they've got. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit skewed because it's an audio survey, so people who don't know whether they've got any audio, well, actually, some of them did respond. But nonetheless, more than 90% of the respondents had got audio setups. And what came out was that on the left-hand 3 of those columns, you can see you've got 3 sets of people adding up to about 50% of the customers at that time who'd got Sandblaster Live. Not really surprising because they've sold tens of millions of those. People with Audiges, about a quarter of our customers. And then people with the NVIDIA Enforce stuff, which also has hardware-accelerated OpenAL support. So we were in a situation there where we knew that if we went for just the software mixer, we were going to deny those 50% of people the opportunity to take advantage of the good quality mixing, head-related transfer functions, surround that doesn't just pick the nearest speaker, that kind of thing. Nonetheless, the other 50%, the people who don't know what they've got or have bought something weird from Philips and French manufacturers, those people at the end, we've got to support those. And all of the people with motherboard AC97 codecs, likewise, we've got to support those. Incidentally, you might have seen the survey result from Steam claiming that nobody's got hardware-accelerated audio. This is a classic example of what happens if you let a robot do your surveys for you. Because what Steam does is, it asks what audio capabilities there are on a PC, and it stops at the first thing it finds. And the first thing it finds on virtually any PC is the motherboard audio, whether it's actually doing anything or not. So it basically never gets to look at the PCI cards. So don't believe that those tens of millions of Audiges and Sandblaster Lives are in the bin. They're being used. And since that survey was done, X-Fi's come out, and 1 million or so of those have gone out, and they've got some really cool audio facilities, and I'm sure Creative are determined to sell some more. So PCM and AL specifics, go quickly through those. You can play PCM 8-bit or 16-bit, but really if you want compressed, you might as well use IMA, ADPCM. Maybe go for a higher sample rate because it struggles a bit sometimes if low sample rates, high slew rates. Interesting thing about that compression is it's actually the same one as on the Xbox One, because the Xbox One audio wasn't done by Microsoft, it was done by NVIDIA. And the IMA compression there, which is also XADPCM, will play straight away on OpenAL, on the PC. That's rather nice because if you've been an Xbox One developer in the past, you can just use your toolchain, your batch converter, the software that came with that, in order to play with the compressed audio. Of course, these are very low CPU, but they're not fabulous compression ratios. So if you want something that's more in the line of MP3 or A-Track or possibly XMA, then you need a psychoacoustic compressor, and in that case, a decompressor. In that case, there's Ogg Vorbis. Now, Ogg Vorbis isn't actually completely built into the PC, but there's about a page of sample code that you use, and that enables you to stream Ogg Vorbis decompressed stuff using the free, patent-free, higher performance, at least at decoding, psychoacoustic compressor, that one. You've got software stereo built in, you've also got support for 7.1 hardware surround, you've got a filter on every voice. At the moment it's a low-pass filter, there's implementations coming of band-pass and high-pass as well. 4 surround reverbs, and these are hardware reverbs, and years of work has gone into these, and they sound absolutely lovely. Not only can you set the directions, you can also set the width of the reverb, that's to say the spread, which is really nice when it comes to building a coherent sound field. For controls, you've got a choice. You can either use the i3DL2 standard interface, which you get on the other platforms as well, or there's a set of those plus some extensions that Creative have provided which enable you to do direction and the width of the sound and so forth, and some extra filtering. At the moment, the software mixer, that's for the people with no hardware, is only stereo, but there's an implementation of that coming, I'm told, later this year, which will support surround. Of course, the snag there is going to take more CPU time. The software mixer, you do get the cool reverb, but you only get one of them. The number of voices on the PC depends very much on the hardware, and I'm going to start talking now about voice management, because that's one of the crucial things that you need to do in order to make a cross-platform game now, and regardless whether you're using OpenAL or any other audio system, you need to have some solution to this. Voice management is about making sure that in a game that could be playing hundreds of things, on a platform that might only be able to play tens, you play the ones that the player needs to hear, and you drop the ones that aren't going to detract from their experience. First thing is, in order to work out what's the most important stuff to hear, it would be very nice to know what's actually going to come out the loudest. And in OpenAL, you can't ask which is the loudest thing that's currently playing, or what the final volumes after all of the 3D calculations and HRTF and listener orientation stuff has been performed. Actually, turns out that wouldn't solve the problem, because what you need to know to do voice management is how loud all of the things that you might not play are going to be as well. So you need to have a little bit of code, which again you can get from the reference implementation, to work out how loud things would be if they were playing. That adjusts for the relative distance. I say relative distance because you might be using multiple listeners. That's the way that things fade off when they get further away, roll off if you like. Lots of different roll-off models in OpenAL, plenty of rope to hang yourself, or you can do it yourself as well if you want to. You've got to adjust as well for per voice volume settings. If you've got volume groups, either in the front end of the game for the customers or for your own mixing of engines and exhausts and things, you've got to combine those volumes in. I recommend that you have an idea of a kind of a noise floor, a certain volume below which you really don't care about things, because you can then immediately decide that you're going to cull things that fall below that volume. But even then, it's not enough to just do virtual voices based on the volume. You've got to have a priority system besides that. And I've tried loads of priority systems over the last 27 years writing games. I've tried floating point numbers, I've tried sign values, I've tried, range of 10 things, percentages, and it comes down to the fact that really only 3 priorities is the best approach in my experience, because if you go for any more than that, it becomes more of an ego statement by the person contributing that particular bit to the game. The 3 priorities I reckon you need are, you can put more in if you want, optional, which is the stuff that you can afford not to hear under any circumstances, important, which is the stuff that if it doesn't play, you want a warning, and vital, where if any of that doesn't play, things like essential messages from the co-driver, your engine of the car, stuff like that, any of that doesn't play, really the game needs redesigning at that point. So it's not a programmer problem, it's a designer issue. One other little thing within the priority groups, I would say, if you have a choice about whether or not to drop a sound, it's better to drop a one-shot than to drop a loop, because it's hassle to get a loop going again. OpenAL 1.1 does let you find out where a loop had got to and restart it from a particular place. You might not need to do that, but if you can drop a one-shot, I suggest you go for that. The basic policy then on voice management is play just the top-end virtual voices, the ones that are most obvious to the player, and drop the others.